All right, welcome back to the Word Podcast. I'm Julian Spivey, the editor, publisher, writer for the Word. I'm joined by Eric Fulton today, who, if you've seen or listened to rather, our previous sports podcasts on the baseball season preview and the Battle of Los Angeles with the Clippers and Lakers we did recently, know that Eric does a lot of our sports-related stuff with us. He actually writes some stuff for my website, too. He just did a great piece on the disappointment of the Los Angeles Dodgers in the baseball playoffs, so check that out if you haven't yet. But today he's joining me to talk about the NBA. We're going to do a little bit of a season preview. We're going to pick the 16 teams that we believe are going to make the NBA playoffs this season. Of course, 8 for each conference. We'll pick a NBA Finals matchup and who we think is going to go all the way, and then maybe get into some awards at the end. But first of all, thanks for joining me again today, Eric.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this upcoming NBA season. It was basically the talk of the summer around the sports world with all the moves, the shakes, everything. I'm very excited to see how this season unfolds.
This offseason with the free agency and trades and players going everywhere seems to really have reinvigorated the NBA, especially after kind of a half decade where it seemed like it was always going to be the Golden State Warriors and Cleveland Cavaliers. And last year in the East, we had a different team with LeBron leaving Cleveland for the Los Angeles Lakers, letting the East open up a bit. Now with Kevin Durant leaving and being injured, and Klay Thompson being injured for at least half the season for the Golden State Warriors, and some big movement in the Western Conference, it seems like this is finally the year that the Western Conference is going to open up a little bit. Let's get right into our projections and predictions. We'll start with the Eastern Conference. And I think that the Eastern Conference is kind of going to take a step back this year.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of the players that moved around went from the East to the West, kind of like Kawhi Leonard, who went from the Toronto Raptors. He led there in one season to a championship, then he bolted for the Los Angeles Clippers. And I just think that from 1 to 8 in our playoffs, we have a lot of teams that just aren't that exciting. Some of them may even make the playoffs with not even winning a record, which you see every now and then in the East. Let's go from 1 to 8. I think the best team in the Eastern Conference this year is actually going to be the Philadelphia 76ers. I just love their starting lineup. You got Ben Simmons, Al Horford, who joined them this offseason from Boston. You have Tobias Harris, and then maybe their best player, their center, Joel Embiid, if he could stay healthy the whole year. That's 4 All-Stars right there. I don't see another team in the East that even has 3 All-Stars in their starting lineup. So I just think that the Philadelphia 76ers, if they can play together, and they seem to be getting better, and this team was one lucky bounce on a Kawhi Leonard shot in the playoffs last year from potentially ending up in the finals last year. Mm-hmm. I know they would have had to have won a series after that before they even got that far, but I think they would have. So I really think they're going to be number 2. The projections website 538 predicts that they will have a record of 52-30 this year, which actually puts them in second place in their projections, but I'm going to put them first. Who do you have as first?
I actually have the Milwaukee Bucks as the first seed.
Which is who 538 is projecting.
Giannis Antetokounmpo, the reigning MVP, he's back. He's got Chris Middleton, Wesley Matthews, Eric Bledsoe, and both the Lopez.
That's going to be fun to watch, the 2 Lopez's on the same team.
Yeah, and I think that... And I think we kind of have it flipped. You have Philadelphia, Milwaukee 1 and 2. I have Milwaukee 1, Philadelphia 2.
Yeah, I definitely think that Philadelphia and Milwaukee are the best 2 teams in the league in the Eastern Conference this season, and I don't think the rest are even close to them. So I'm definitely got the Bucks number 2. Do you want to say anything about Philly at number 2 on your list?
I think Philly. I think the loss of J.J. Redick is going to hurt a little bit.
He, of course, is going to New Orleans this year.
But I think the chemistry without Jimmy Butler is going to be...
Could be better. Jimmy Butler signed with the Miami Heat this offseason.
But I think the key for Philadelphia to me are 2 things. One, if Joel B stays healthy, they're probably going to have to load manage him just to... make sure that he gets through in the springtime.
And we've seen success with this before. The Raptors did it last year with Kawhi Leonard, and they ended up winning the championship.
And then if Ben Simmons can also get a jump shot.
He actually, in the preseason, has made the first 3. I did not realize that he had gone 2 seasons without a three-pointer. Made the first three-pointer of his career in the preseason, which was maybe a sign that he may be developing a bit of a jumper. And I do want to apologize, folks, if y'all may hear a dog or two barking in the background. My dogs are in the room with us as we're recording this, as they frequently are, and I feel like I give this notice once every time we record. Number 3 on my list, this is where there's a significant drop for me. And by the way, 538, as I mentioned, did project the Bucks to be the best team in the East. They project them to go 53-29, which is one game better than the 76ers in their projection. The team that they have projected at number 3 this year is the team that I'm going to go with. That's the Boston Celtics. They have them projected to win 46 games, lose 36. I'm not sure I see them winning that many games, but I do have them as 3rd on my list. I like the addition of Kemba Walker, the all-star from previously with the Charlotte Hornets, as their new point guard because they lost Kyrie Irving. Almost got him and Kawhi Leonard mixed up. Irving's going to the Brooklyn Nets now. They've got some other good players in their lineup. Former All-Star Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, a guy who could be an All-Star, Marcus Smart, who plays great defense. They have some good players coming off the bench in Jaylen Brown and Enes Kanter. So I have Boston finishing 3rd this year in the East. Who do you have at number 3?
Well, I have the Brooklyn Nets at 3 with the addition of Kyrie Irving. I know Kevin Durant's not going to play this year, but if you look at Brooklyn's team, even without those two guys, they gave Philly a headache in the first
They did,
round.
and I actually have left them completely out of my playoffs in the East, which I think is going to surprise people. I looked at this team and thought, it's just Kyrie Irving and some other guys who don't really merit much talk. And maybe that's wrong of me, because if you look at the team, kind of almost the same as last year, except Kyrie Irving is replacing D'Angelo Russell, and Irving is a better version of Russell. So maybe even without Kevin Durant, they can still be where you have them as the 3rd best team in the East. It's just, I just didn't see much when I looked at that roster, so I left them completely off my list. But I would not be surprised if you end up being closer to being right. I don't necessarily think they're going to be as high as 3, but like I said, I don't even have them making it, so that could be, I would say that you may end up being closer on that projection. Who do you have at number 4?
I have the defending NBA champion Raptors. Obviously, they don't have Kawhi Leonard.
Which is a huge loss. The biggest loss of any team in the offseason.
But they do keep Kyle Lowry.
Their all-star point guard.
They do keep Marc Gasol. They do keep Pascal Siakam.
Who was huge for him last year, especially in the playoffs.
They still have Fred VanVleet.
Great bench player.
And yes, and Danny Green's also going to be a huge loss for them too.
Yeah, he will. They lost 2 members of their NBA Final winning starting lineup. And you have them dropping from the best team in the NBA to 4th in the Eastern Conference. I actually have them dropping one spot further and dropping to number 5. I don't really have too much to add to them except for to say that the projections from 538 were that they would win 46 games and lose 36, which basically has them tied for 3rd in the East with the Celtics on their projections. You got them at 4. I've got them at 5. The biggest surprise for me on my list when I was looking at rosters, and I think a lot of people will be surprised when I say this, I have the Orlando Magic, who just got into the playoffs last year with the 8th seed. I have them jumping up 4 spots and being the 5th seed this year. I like what they've done with this team, and it was kind of shocking to me that they were able to re-sign both of their stars, Nick Vucevic and Aaron Gordon, this offseason. I thought both of those guys would go to perhaps better teams. I like Evan Fournier, who's got a great shot, and Jonathan Isaac, a good young player, Mo Bamba, a good young player, Terrence Ross coming off the bench can score a bunch of points. 538 only has them projected to win 42 games and lose 40, which would make the playoffs, but as a lower seed. But I think that they're good enough in a weak conference to be as high as number 4.
And they're in a bad division, by the way.
Yeah, they are.
With Atlanta, Miami, Washington.
Yeah. So I actually project that they will end up winning that division. That doesn't mean quite as much.
But it doesn't. I mean, yeah, it doesn't mean quite as much. But still, they got in as a 7th seed and gave Toronto all they could handle in the first round.
As I said a bit ago, I have Toronto at number 5. So who's your number 5 seed?
I have Boston at number 5.
Mm-hmm. 2 spots lower than I had them. Is there a reason you think for that drop? Is it did they just lose too much in Al Horford and Kyrie Irving?
The loss of Irving and Horford are big, but still they've got some. Kemba Walker's going to have a chance to finally make the playoffs after being in a bad team in Charlotte for all these years. So, I think Kemba is going to play very well up to his All-Star stands and finally getting into the playoffs.
Actually, let's go with your number 6 because I see it's a team I've already had on my list.
Orlando will be number 6.
So you actually have Orlando higher than I think a lot of people would too. I think a lot of people would have them either at 7 or 8 or even missing the playoffs.
But when you look at teams that I have below the Magic, 6 is probably anywhere from 4 to 6 is probably going to be best for the Magic.
I think that of maybe any team in the East, they had the fewest amount of changes going into the season, which could help them. Number 6, my number 6 seed is the Indiana Pacers, who actually, when I prepared my notes yesterday, I had them as the 4th seed and not Orlando. But then I found out that Victor Oladipo's recovery is going to take just a little bit longer, so he's not going to be there the whole season. But it shouldn't take him too long, and he's definitely the gas in the Pacers tank. They do have Malcolm Brogdon, though, who played great for the Milwaukee Bucks, so that's a great addition. And I like some of their other stars. You got Miles Turner, who's one of the best shot blockers in the league at center. Domantas Sabonis, Arvydas Sabonis' kid's a good shooter. 538 projects them to win 43 games and lose 39, which I think would have them right around the 6th seed in my opinion. Who do you have at number 7 on your list?
I have Detroit. Last year they made the playoffs at the final day of the regular season. If Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond can stay healthy, they can be a very good team. And then, you got 2 veterans, Derrick Rose, Joe Johnson, coming off the bench. Pistons are going to have a pretty good team, and that can just probably only be 500. But again, it's the Eastern Conference. It could be very well still be good enough to make the playoffs.
This is the first team that we completely agree on seeding wise. I also have Detroit at 7. 2 potential All-Stars and 2 of the best big men in the East, and Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond. Reggie Jackson's a pretty serviceable point guard. Like you said, with the veterans, Derrick Rose and Joe Johnson coming off the bench. Joe Johnson's actually one of the best stories, I think, of the offseason. He was in Ice Cube's 3-on-3 league. I forget the actual name of it. Maybe you remember it.
It's right off the top of my head.
Because few people watch it. But Joe Johnson was actually in it and was a knockout in it and showed he could still shoot. So the old vet from the University of Arkansas is returning. Now, even though we both have the Detroit Pistons as our 7th seed, 538 actually projected this team to finish 10 games below 500, 36-46, which of course they wouldn't make the playoffs if that happens. So that's interesting to me that both of us think that they're going to be quite a bit better. I think they'll be around 500 definitely this year. My number 8 team is the Miami Heat. The big addition is Jimmy Butler from the offseason. He'll be their star. Throw him in with Goran Dragic and some other players. I think that this team could be the 41-41 team that 538 projects them to be, and they are my 8th seed. Your 8th seed is a team that I've already talked about. Who do you have and why?
I got Indiana at 8. As you said, that Victor Oladipo is going to miss a little bit of time to start the season, but if they get him back, he is basically their team leader, and they're going to rely on him to get it,
They were looking really good last year before he got hurt, and now once he comes back, they'll actually should be even better with, like I mentioned, the addition.
Yeah,
of
and I have just the Heat just missing out, and I also have the Bulls. I think the Bulls have a lot of young talent, but they're
maybe
going to
a year
be
or 2 away. And
they're probably still another year or 2 away.
The team that I have missing out is, of course, the one you had at number 3, the Brooklyn Nets, and the one team that you have missing out that I have making it is the Miami Heat, which was my 8th seed, so no real surprise there. Let's skip ahead or go ahead to the Western Conference now, and this is going to be an amazing conference to watch. I think all 8 of these teams are going to have impressive seasons. Of course, we'll start at number 1, and I've got the Los Angeles Clippers. I think now the best team in Los Angeles, but they're going to be neck and neck with the Lakers this year. The additions of Kawhi Leonard and Paul Green are just incredible. Patrick Beverly at their point guard, still one of the best defenders in the NBA. You still have the reigning sixth man of the year, Lou Williams, come off the bench, as well as Montrezl Harrell, who actually thought that they would put in the starting lineup this year, but it looks like they're going to go with Paul George at power forward this year and keep Harrell off the bench, which he worked really well last year. So I have the Clippers as the best team in the Western Conference.
Oh, I totally agree.
Actually, I'm kind of peeking at your notes here, and it's going to be a while before we disagree on a team in the West. So let's go around on to number 2. I have the Los Angeles Lakers at number 2. The addition to if Anthony Davis joining this team to match up with LeBron James, if this team can't be one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the Western Conference this year, I would be absolutely shocked. I think it would have to be health problems to affect that. Kyle Kuzma is hurt right now, who's their third best player. It may take him a little while to get going. Another great addition they had was signing Danny Green, who once they get into the playoffs, his three-point shooting will just be outrageous. And they took a flyer on Dwight Howard when DeMarcus Cousins went down with injury again. So that should be easy. Of course, Dwight Howard was basically run out of Los Angeles the first time he was there when Kobe Bryant was still on the team. And he's basically just going to be a guy who's going to try to keep his head down, grab some rebounds, block some shots, and kind of, be 4th, 5th, 6th fiddle on the team. The 538 has them projected to win 47 games and lose 35, which I believe they would have them as the 5th best team in the West, which I think is a little low. And by the way, our first team, the Clippers, they project to be 52-30, which they have as the 2nd best team in the West. You also have the Lakers at number 2.
Yeah, I also have the Lakers at 2. I don't know how 538 would have projected all of this, but
they're usually pretty good at their projections.
Well, yeah, I'm not gonna doubt them or anything, but I will say about the Lakers. To me, I think it's about health, and probably coaching, because Frank Vogel's the new head coach.
Who had a lot of success in Indiana. I don't think Orlando gave him enough of a shot though,
or enough time really. Mm-hmm. And then Jason Kidd. A lot of people forget that Jason Kidd has come on to be the associate, I guess you could say, head coach.
Yeah, they kind of have a coach A, a coach 1A and a coach 1B, it seems like.
And obviously, if Vogel goes down, he's probably going to be, if the Lakers get off to a horrible start, Vogel's going to be the fall guy, and Kidd's probably going to end up being the coach. So watch out for that.
The team that we both have at number 3 as the number 3 seed is the Houston Rockets, and this is actually the team that 538 has projected to be the best team in the entire NBA. They have them projected to win 57 games, lose 25, which is 5 games better than their second-place Clippers projection. Of course, maybe the biggest other than Kawhi Leonard to the Clippers deal of the offseason was the trade which sent Russell Westbrook from Oklahoma City to Houston for Chris Paul. And it reunites Westbrook and James Harden, a perennial MVP candidate, on the Houston team after they spent many years together in Oklahoma City a while back. The biggest question between these two is there going to be enough shots to go around with arguably the 2 biggest ball hogs in the entire NBA. The rest of the roster looks pretty much the same as it did with Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker, Clint Capella, Austin Rivers, Gerald Green coming off the bench. It's really a question of personalities and attitudes for me, not talent. 538 obviously is just basing this solely on the talent, which I think is fair, but I'm going to have them just below both teams from Los Angeles.
What do you I agree with that too.
Do you want to add anything?
If the Rockets don't go really far in the playoffs, do not be surprised if Mike D'Antoni's out.
Oh, I wouldn't have been surprised if he was out last season. I kind of was shocked that he wasn't personally. The team that we both agree on at number 4 is the Utah Jazz, who just keep doing good things with that team, keep building it. They already had 2 All-Stars, and actually I don't know if Rudy Gobert's ever made an All-Star team, but he's one of the guys that probably should have if he hasn't. But they have 2 great players in Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert already. Joe Ingles, a great shooter. And then they add one of the most underrated point guards in the NBA, Mike Conley, who's been with the Memphis Grizzlies the last few years. Bojan Bogdanovic is a pretty good shooter. And you got some good guys in Jeff Green and Emmanuel Mudiay coming off the bench. 531 projects them to be 51-31 this year. That probably sounds about right to me. They may win a couple more games than that. You also have them at 4.
I do agree. I mean, I love Utah's starting line. If there's one starting lineup that I figured, okay, this is probably the best 5 if they stay healthy, be consistent, it's Utah. Because you think about it. I love Donovan. The guard combination of Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell is going to be very special to watch. Rudy Gobert is a reigning defensive player.
Yeah, and he's a guy who's likely to win it again. Every year he's going to be atop that list.
Joe Ingles doesn't get enough credit.
I agree.
And Bogdanovich was a huge pickup for them. So I like this team. If Utah was in the East, they'd probably be in the Eastern Conference Finals for sure.
I agree with that. I think here's the shocker for both of us. I have them a little bit higher than you do. Last year, the Denver Nuggets, a lot of people may have already forgotten this, they were actually the number 1 seed in the Western Conference last year. I believe. They did end up clinching over the Warriors at the last second, didn't they? They are pretty much unchanged from last year, and they may even be healthier because last year one of their better players, Paul Millsap, missed a lot of the year. And, of course, they have one of the guys who was an MVP candidate last year, and Nikola Jokic. And 538 still projects them to be one of the best teams, winning 53 games, losing 29. I have them falling all the way down to number 5 this year with all the changes that happened in the West. And I see that you actually have them one spot lower than that at number 6. Why do you think we've done this?
Okay. Denver, to me, was probably the biggest surprise of all the teams by far last year.
Especially being the number 1 seed in the West.
Yeah, I mean, Nikola Jokic had maybe one of the greatest non-MVP seasons ever in the NBA. Go find one that's even better. I mean, and I think the guy only finished, 5th?
Yeah. Big guys have a hard time winning the MVP these days.
But, I mean, that guy single-handedly carried that team to a surprise number 1. I don't think nobody's going to take Denver lightly this year.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to take them lightly. I mean, they'll make the playoffs for sure.
Oh, no doubt.
And I know that the team I have at 5, they have a lot of question marks, obviously, but they still have one of the top coaches in the league. They still have one of the top players in Steph Curry. They still have one of the top defensive players in DeAndre Green. I mean,
Draymond Green.
Draymond Green. And then, obviously, the addition of D'Angelo Russell. Now, I know Klay Thompson isn't going to be there, but
he may be ready for the second half.
But if he's ready for the second half,
they would be more of a threat in the playoffs than I think they will be
in the regular
seeding
season
of the regular season.
I think for Golden State, if they're still going to be a tough out in the playoffs no matter what.
The great thing about Golden State Warriors over the last half decade, they've been to 5 titles in a championship rounds in a row and won 3 of those, is that they had a really great bench. They do not have that anymore.
Their bench
is weak. And one of their best, the guy who would be their best bench player is Alfonso McKinney. He's going to have to go into the starting lineup until Klay Thompson gets back, hopefully at midseason for the Warriors, maybe even later. The addition of an all-star in D'Angelo Russell was great. That'll keep them afloat. Steph Curry is going to be as good, I think, as we've ever seen him this year because he's going to have to be. Draymond Green's numbers are going to be better than they have been because he's now going to be their second guy instead of their 4th. And I think Kevon Looney's going to be a really good center in this league, but this is definitely not the team it was last 5 years. 538 still projects them to be 12 games over 500, winning almost 50 games. That's probably about right, in my opinion.
Yeah,
48 wins seems about right, even for a hard conference like this. But I have the Warriors falling one spot lower than you do as the 6th seed, which sounds weird after the last half decade.
Yeah, it does.
Number 7 is the one that we're going to agree on again. We've agreed on both 7 seeds in each conference, and we each have the Portland Trailblazers. I'm surprised that 538 only has this team going 41-41, and I actually don't think they have them making the playoffs. Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum are back. Guys who are all-stars. Rodney Hood can put up good numbers for him. They added Hassan Whiteside, who's one of the best rebounders, shot blockers in the league from Miami. They added some veteran presence on the bench in Pau Gasol. I definitely see this team making the playoffs. I'm not sure what the 41-41 projection's about.
I do too. I mean, I still Lillard and McCollum are still a very good guard combo, and they can, they'll contend for one of the best guard combos in the West and all of NBA. They're right up there with some of the best ones in the league. And I mean, I still think, Portland's going to be a good team. The problem is if they were in the East, they probably would have a better record.
Yeah, and there's actually going to be teams that we each have missing out on the playoffs this year in the West that probably would have been fourth seeds, could have been fourth.
Yeah,
seeds
so I mean, fourth, fifth seed, sixth seed, maybe.
My final seed in the Western Conference this year is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been one of the more underachieving and disappointing teams the last few years, especially as young guys like Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins keep maturing. If they can't make the playoffs this year, I think that they just need to they need to get at least rid of Wiggins and try to rebuild a little bit around Towns, if not just completely blow it up, because they just don't seem to be going anywhere when they have to be trending upward. 538 does project them to be a little bit better this year with a 43 win and 39 loss record. You don't have them making the playoffs.
I don't have the team.
Is there a reason why?
I just never. I didn't think based on, the competition that the West is obviously the stronger conference as a whole.
Yeah.
And I just don't. Even though Minnesota does have Karl Anthony Towns, who's one of the better players in the league, I just don't. Their starting lineup, their bench, I just don't see it.
They don't have much of a bench. You are right about that.
I just don't see it that way.
I feel a little bit guilty leaving the Dallas Mavericks out of my playoffs, especially if Kristaps Porzingis is back and healthy. Him going with reigning Rookie of the Year, Luka Doncic. That Dallas Mavericks team could sneak in and be the 8th seed. I feel a little guilty.
I feel like
you don't have them either.
I feel like the 8th team I got is San Antonio.
I actually think this is the year that Greg Popovich can't get the Spurs into the playoffs. They do have two former All-Stars still in LaMarcus Aldridge and
DeMar DeRozan.
DeMar DeRozan, his second year with the team, and they got him in there last year. I just think there's too much going on in the Western Conference. But why do you continue to think Popovich will get the team? Is it because he's Greg Popovich?
I mean, listen. I think if Popovich can probably coach, I don't know, guys that haven't played well and maybe get them to a 500 record, if not the playoffs. I think San Antonio they're going to fight. They're going to fight. I think, they're going to barely, they're going to edge out New Orleans in the.
Well, I do root for them because it's one of the most impressive streaks and records in the history of sports. By far the longest playoff streak going. It's over 20 years now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or right at it. So I do root for Greg Popovich, who really you could argue maybe the greatest coach in the NBA history.
Yeah.
You said you have them just over the Pelicans. Do you think rookie Zion Williamson and that young team that includes now Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball, do you think that they're going to give the 8th seed at least a little bit of a sniff this year?
I think they're going to. I think just based on talent, but we'll have to see how that talent evolves. I think for guys like Ball and Ingram, I think it's a brand new start for them.
Which they really need, especially Lonzo
and I
Ball.
feel like they need it. I feel like those two guys really need a fresh start, and so did Josh Hart. I think JJ Redick he's
going to be a great veteran.
He's going to be a major asset to this team. I think that really, if you came down to it, roster wise, I said okay, New Orleans has the talent and the depth to make the playoffs, but I said for the AFC, I'm going with experience. That's why I picked San Antonio, not New Orleans. But I do agree with you on the Mavericks just missing out as well. I love Doncic, and I can't wait to see how Porzingis does in his first full year down there too.
let's get to some of the awards projections. I only really projected MVP. I may throw in some picks when you do your others, but who do you have winning? Coach
I have
of the year?
Kawhi. I have Kawhi.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll do MVP then. You have Kawhi Leonard winning it. For the Clippers, he did win. Did he? He never won it with the Spurs, did he?
No,
he never would be his first. It's the two NBA Finals MVPs.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm thinking of. I don't see a reason why Giannis Antetokounmpo can't win it again. It's been a long time since you've seen a back-to-back winner, or at least a few years. Was Steph Curry the last one to do it? Mm-hmm. So it's been a handful of years at least. I think he won it the first 2 years that the Warriors made the finals, I believe.
A lot of people have gone with LeBron, and that's
it's LeBron.
But I just couldn't see it.
The fact that he's got a guy on his team in Anthony Davis who may actually score more points and may be a better all-around player than LeBron, I hate to say that, but as LeBron ages and Anthony Davis is in his prime, he may not even be the best player on his team this year. So it's going to be hard for LeBron to win
I think it's
MVP.
definitely changed for
so
sure.
So I'm going to go with Antetokounmpo for a second here. I really do enjoy your pick, especially if the Clippers can go all the way. Of course, that really shouldn't have to do with the MVP because it's supposed to be a regular season award. Your coach of the year is going to be?
I'm going to pick Doc Rivers.
That makes sense to me. I guess I'll echo that. But the fact that we both think the Clippers should be the best team in the NBA, it's hard for a guy who's coaching a team that you think should be the best team because it's always usually a surprising team that does it. If Orlando can get into the 4th seed in the East, maybe their new coach, who I can't even remember who it is, honestly, could be the coach of the year. Do you remember who Orlando's coach is? So we don't.
Steve Clifford.
Steve Clifford, yes, who used to coach in Charlotte. And I think this could be an easy Rookie of the Year pick. The number one guy, Zion Williamson, we're going to agree on.
Yeah.
If the guy does anything like what he did in college, he should just be a highlight reel in the NBA. And he's actually he being on the Pelicans has the Pelicans on opening night on national broadcast television. This is a team that neither of us have making the playoffs, but he's going to get them on TV a lot.
Oh yeah, Pelicans will be on national TV a lot, and that's just the impact of what he brings. But I will say that Jean Murray for the Memphis Grizzlies, I think he'll give Zion a run in Rookie of the Year. And Memphis is not
really going
to be one of those years.
Memphis this year.
Well, Memphis is. I mean, they're not there yet.
Yeah.
But give them about another year or two. They'll be back in the playoffs.
Of course, we're going to wrap this NBA season preview up with our NBA Finals predictions. Go ahead, Eric.
I got the Clippers over Sixers.
That is exactly the same as I have. I know we've talked about in the past that we often have a lot of the same picks. There was actually maybe a little bit of more change, especially in the Eastern Conference, than I thought we'd have. But it just seems like Clippers and 76ers, who are my number one seeds, are the teams to beat. I noticed that you actually have Philly as your 2 seed in the East, but you're going to pick them to make the finals.
I just feel like, I think the Sixers are going to be very motivated, especially how last year ended. I mean, in probably the most heartbreaking way possible.
With that Kawhi Leonard shot that clanked off the rim before finally dropping. One of the greatest moments in the history of the NBA playoffs. I want to thank Eric again for joining me. I know you'll hear from him in future sports-related podcasts. I also want to say that you can find our podcast at Apple, Spotify. We record it on Anchor, and you can find it there as well. Pretty much anywhere where podcasts are, you can find the word podcast. Also, check us out on our website, thewordwebzine.weebly.com, and you can follow us on social media at both Facebook and Twitter just by searching at The Word Webzine. Y'all have a good one.